Hey, y'all. How are you doing? This is another episode of the Bridge Podcast, and we're glad to talk to you about healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, and abusive relationships today. This is still October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're still creating awareness about how to identify healthy relationships, how to identify unhealthy, when it's time to say no to abusive relationships, and all that. And like we said in the last episode, that relationship exists within a spectrum of healthy, unhealthy, and abusive. And since we have talked extensively on healthy relationships, it's time for us to flip the coin and talk about all things unhealthy and all things abusive. So, girls, are you ready to dive in?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Van, set us the tone.
Okay, so last time we talked, we did talk about healthy relationships, like Joyce was saying, and we got that from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So today, they also put different behaviors and traits in unhealthy and abusive relationships. So for unhealthy, some of those behaviors look like not communicating with each other, disrespect in the relationship, not trusting each other, having dishonesty, trying to take control, only spending time together, pressured into different activities, and being unequal economically. And then in abusive, we have still communicating, but communicating in hurtful and threatening ways, mistreating each other, mistreating your partner, accusing the other of cheating when it isn't true, denying their actions are abusive, controlling, isolating their partners from others. So those are the kind of lists for unhealthy and abusive. What are you guys thinking as you hear those?
Go ahead, okay.
No, like I didn't see unequal economically before. So hearing you say that, and I'm, in my head, I'm like, I feel like every other person who's listening would be like, how is that unhealthy?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think it can be, let me think about that.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I know in the healthy traits was like equal, and then under it talked about like economic and financially. But I wonder if the unhealthy is, this is more of like a question, but I wonder if the unhealthy is like, you know, throwing those things to your face, or, you know, just like not, like if I'm making 40K and this person is making 60K and we aren't distributing better. You know what I mean? Like things like that, like the responsibility of finances and stuff.
I think that, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, that the resources that have been, you know, developed are continuously growing. And I think that this component of unequal economic status between partners, I think that it comes from, you know, it derives from economic abuse, right? So like being controlling in a way that I control all the finances, that limits you and how you can provide for yourself.
Right.
I think that that's what that means. But I think that us, you know, being the researchers that we are, understand the possible gaps with that, and how like it should be, or what I'm thinking more of unequal responsibility, because someone can take finance, like can be the financial leader within that relationship. Maybe they do all the finances, or they bring in all the finances. But there's also what we talked about before about that in a previous podcast about that. Unpaid labor, right? So I'm doing everything within the household, right? So an unequal balance in those responsibilities, I think, will be a better component in discussing that in comparison to just saying unequal economics, because we talked about the case by case, how that looks like, and if one partner is like, I could pay all the bills, and then and this is what you do, that's amongst you two to work out. But it's when one controls one aspect of the responsibilities in a manner that you cannot sustain yourself or that relationship without that person. So in a controlling manner. So that's my takeaway from that. And we're going to do that when we get these resources. We're going to tell you what we like, and we're going to tell you what things need to possibly be altered to fit today's dynamic, right? So just important to say that.
And you might be thinking, what's the difference between unhealthy and abusive relationship? It's like, I think it's a thin line between, for a relationship to be unhealthy and then fall into abusive. And like you were talking about behind the scenes about like there is actually no direct definition of unhealthy and abusive, but we have some instances like the impact of the unhealthy relationships, what impact, if it has an abusive impact on the person, or the level of the unhealthy relationship. And then we talk about like the severity, right, of unhealthy relationship and how it could be abusive. So we're just also giving like tips and things to identify in an unhealthy and also how it leads to being abusive. So just to like set the tone for that.
We also talked about intention.
Yes,
The intention
yes,
behind
yes,
it.
and intention behind it, exactly.
So that intention, that impact, and that level of severity is what creates that line between unhealthy and abusive. And now that we're like actually talking it out in the podcast, because we did, talk about it a little bit beforehand, I'm also thinking too that pattern. I think that that's important too.
Yeah.
Because having that like that buildup of like this is continuously happening is a big thing too.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I will add a pattern of these unhealthy traits turns into abuse, or a pattern of these abusive traits confirms that this is abuse.
The consistency.
The University of Wyoming also says that it talks about like how you can have traits that are unhealthy in relationships. And one of those things could be communicating, but one of those things doesn't have to be. And so if it's not communicating, it's also like being able to communicate, okay, these are unhealthy behaviors. And then they talked about how unhealthy behavior should happen often, but that if you notice these patterns, that is like a big red flag that it could be abusive. And so also looking at that and like using hurtful words, and it's also having like disrespect, not trusting. Those are unhealthy traits. But if it's not, it can tip over to abusive when the intention is also control, when the person doesn't care about what the other person is saying. When there's so many of these aspects that's also happening, and it's consistently happening even after you've communicated that this is unhealthy or this isn't how I like to be treated and things like that.
Yeah. So do we start from the not communicating part? Because I think we already like just touched upon it, but if we would like to expand on it a little bit more.
I actually feel like communication and I think in the other episode Jen had talked about communicating to respond and communicating to listen. So I also feel like communication, when you communicate in a hurtful way or like in a threatening way, like we also said in the other episode, it makes the other person become defensive. So like when the person's communication style is constantly abusive, it becomes or it's constantly unhealthy, and like Jen said, there's a pattern to that unhealthy communication style. It becomes an abusive situation. So I feel like that's also like an abusive occurrence in relationship.
Yeah,
and I think that too, like when it comes to the communication piece for unhealthy and abusive, I think that a big thing between the differences can be like that feeling of fear, those feelings that are associated when these traits are exhibited in the relationship. You know what I mean? Like, am I fearful when this person does this and when that person does that? Is the intent to make me fearful, so that I am now listening, or now I am being controlled in some shape or manner? So I think that big piece of fear is really, really big. And then that goes again about that self-awareness, right? Like, okay, when this person is, to that example that we talked about in the last episode, slamming doors. Are they doing that to get my attention? Are they doing that to make me feel fearful and like do what it is that they're saying? Because I don't want that. That slamming of the door is that I don't want to be. It's like an escalation of fear tactics. So what happens after slamming the door? Like, is it like now throwing things? Like, I don't want it to build up to that. So let me do what this person wants or needs, which is a form of being controlled.
Especially again if you're not like if you're slamming doors, and then I've already expressed to you, we don't do this in the house, like this is not how I'm going to receive that information. We don't slam doors because of XYZ, or we just don't do that in the house, right? And you continue to do it because you want me to feel that fear, that's a big red flag that might be abusive.
Yeah, and I think another thing is about not communicating is having expectations of what you want this person to do without telling them what you expect them to do. I mean, it's one thing to expect people to do something for you,
Yeah.
but not saying it. I mean, how do you expect them to know? And I think people say that if you expect too much from people, you're bound to get disappointed. But it's not bad. I don't think it's wrong to have an expectation of what you want someone to do for you, but just let the person know about it, because it can't just be in your head because they're not seeing you.
Yeah.
So Joyce, I'm gonna take that example and bear with me, guys. I'm gonna take that example of those expectations, right? And I'm gonna try to give you an example of how that turns into abuse, right?
Okay.
Okay, so I have this expectation that dinner is supposed to be done at 9 p.m. or whatever. Just a very broad, random. Okay, and then, but I don't express that. I just expect for you to know that I get off at 8, dinner should be done by 9, right? Okay, so I'm not expressing that. And then when 9 p.m. comes up, and I start saying, where's dinner? You know what I mean? And then start making a big, an issue out of something
it.
that I
Yeah.
didn't tell you was the expectation. And now I'm using this to make you feel guilty. Why didn't you do this? You know that I just got off of work. Why can't you just be helpful to me? Why are you not a good partner to me?
good.
You know what I mean? And now I'm using this expectation that I never disclosed to you as now a tool to control you in a way that I'm making you feel guilty, and now I want you to do everything I say, or I want this to be done at this time, or you're going to hear my mouth about it again and again and again. And so how that little okay, well, I didn't know this expectation, how that is taken to that different level.
Yeah, that's a very good example, actually. So if you have expectations at all, talk about it before it becomes something else.
Yeah. And also, let's talk about infidelity and accusing the other person. Not like infidelity. Let's talk about accusing the other person of doing something they're not doing, like cheating.
Okay. All right. So,
especially when it's untrue.
Yeah. So, I think that we talked about a little bit before. Joyce mentioned it about how unhealthy traits looks like jealousy.
Yeah.
Right? So, constantly, who is that? Who you on the phone with? Who you
Yeah.
Or why you say hi to that guy?
Why you smiling
Why
so
you say
hard?
hi to that girl? Yeah, why you say hi to that girl?
Yeah.
Why are you doing all of these things? Why are you engaging in any form of communication with anybody outside of me?
Yeah.
You know, that's one of those forms of jealousy. And then, but when we get again into this abusive trait, I have this really good example, and I'll make sure that we provide the link to it, and I'll make it short. It's this video that is showed at a lot of DV summits, and it's about a couple, and the woman is going upstairs, and she tells her partner, I'll see you later, right? And then she was like, I'll call you when I get upstairs. And so she gets upstairs, she drops all her stuff, and then she takes a little bit longer than expected. And the guy calls and was like, who's up there? Why are you taking so long to call me? And then he brings up okay, well, why? Well, because I seen that you was smiling at the person from the other store earlier.
Yeah.
Did you get their number when I wasn't around? And then okay, so these forms of jealousy, right? But then it goes into that again when it's that pattern developed. It kept happening, and then you kept reliving that day because it wouldn't stop. Well, where you at? Okay, who you talking to? So then the person broke her phone because now I don't want you talking to anybody else. So you see how that jealousy escalates, right?
Too abusive. All right.
So then we see those patterns, those cycles, and how they escalate, right? So then it all was rooted in just not being trustworthy of that partner because the other partner wasn't doing anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we see how that, just an example of that.
And you know something, right? For people who actually think, for people who are actually in that position where they think that their partner is cheating when their partner is not, they're so solidly they actually believe in what they say.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's nothing you can actually tell them that you're not doing that stuff for them to like actually believe that you're not doing that stuff. Because I've actually seen someone who the partner had to stop working as a nurse, you know, stop going to like church small groups activities,
Impacting their
you know,
livelihood.
just
Wow.
stop
Yeah,
like,
isolating them.
stop doing so many other things because the partner didn't want to go out so that the other partner wouldn't say like, okay, you're doing something, because every time that partner goes out, it's like, oh, you're hanging out with these people, oh, who's that person you smiled at, oh, why did you respond? It was even up to like, why did you respond to that greeting in that way? You know, stuff like that. People can be
I mean, I'm just
so I feel like when things are like, when there's a pattern of unhealthy behavior and it's leading to being abusive, like people should actually know when those red flags are screaming in their faces.
But I think that given examples, the good examples that you just provided, it goes into gaslighting, right?
Oh yeah.
So gaslighting, I'll read the definition to you all, is a psychological abuse or manipulation that involves manipulating someone into questioning their own perceptions of reality. So given the example that Oge just gave about, you know, like those greeting other people and being told that might have been a little bit too flirtatious. What are you trying to do? And then that gaslighting is like, wait, was I being flirtatious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't want my partner to think that I was being flirtatious. Well, I just won't speak to anybody. You know what I mean? And that's why having that education, awareness of what these things look like,
right,
to help you, because gaslighting is real. You know that was gaslighting was the word of the year last year?
I believe it. I've heard it a lot. I've even
It was the
seen it
number
on
one
like
word of
social
the year.
media and stuff like that. So I definitely believe it. I did want to touch on like something Oge was saying about that like they believe that you are cheating, so there's nothing that you can tell them, and just touch on how that is the control also. It's like you can't control if this person, like for your example, Jen, if she was by chance cheating or doing something like that, you literally can't control how she's going to do this or what she's doing or what's in her phone or all these things. Like you only can control yourself. And so like I did just want to put that out there, that it becomes abusive when you're trying to really control the other person and what they're doing, instead of taking a step back and seeing like, can I trust this person? Is this person being truthful? Is this person being honest? And all of these things. Yeah, so I just want to say that, because I think the reality is that they're trying to control the narrative and control this person so that they don't do these things or whatever the intention is behind that. When you can't control a person, they're going to have friends, they're going to be around somebody, like all of these things are going to happen. So like throwing the phone and, you know, believing that this, you could believe all you want. However, you still can't control whether that person is going to cheat or not cheat. You only can control how you respond to those things.
Yeah, and I also think for people who are like very friendly with other people, I mean, you know, this person is like friendly. This person, I mean, talks to people. I mean, you can't go out with this person and the person takes 5 steps and not greet somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, do you now constantly have to like, I mean, I don't know how best to put it, but like give people grace. That's what I'm trying to talk about, because if you know the temperament of the other person, you don't have to misread it, and you can also just ask questions. I mean, all these issues of not trusting, especially cheating if it's untrue, it just boils down to having communicate. I mean, it could be easier said than done, but I think it's also like important to put that infuse that in the habit, like asking questions, like talking about it. Is this what I'm seeing? Is it true? Some people can be truthful. Some people can choose to lie about it, but you know that you're doing your own part, not accusing, even when you see like the signs, just like talk about it. Like I said, it's easier said than done. And I mean,
I just want to make a note that we talk about these unhealthy and abusive traits, and we talk about like infidelity because it comes up a lot, right? I just want to make it, because I noticed that this is something within social media too. In cases of like where situations happen, such as infidelity, that should still not result in fatalities.
Yes.
right.
I think that it is this precedent now where people believe that if they are done wrong in a relationship,
Yep.
that they now have this privilege
authority, yeah.
to now cause harm.
Yeah.
That is still unacceptable.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
That is not an acceptable response.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I put that out there because that has been, I've been seeing a lot of social media videos. It was a video recently where a woman was caught in an infidelity act, which of course unhealthy. You should not be engaging in that. But her partner severely harmed her.
Yeah.
And that response, unacceptable.
Yeah, on both parts too, are just like fatality, but abuse of just like doing stuff to people's belongings and things, and also, you know, like you have the choice. Like I just want to say, like you do have the power to decide. You have the key to whatever it is that you are in a lot of situations. Not in all situations, just to be clear. Like we know that abuse it is hard to leave, but in situations where there is cheating and infidelity, and you do have the ability, and you and yourself know you have the ability in that relationship to leave healthily and safely. You also have the power and the control to decide what it is that you want to do. And so when a situation comes to, if somebody is cheating, if you had a mutual agreement and they didn't do what they were supposed to do and they went behind your back and all of these things, like you have the choice to pivot and leave, or you have the choice to have a communication with this person and try again. Like you can do that. It doesn't have to result in harming somebody, harming their things, or killing them.
Yeah. That was a good one.
All right, so we talked about a lot of the unhealthy traits, right? So we already went into the non-communication, disrespect, not trusting. Did we talk about a little bit about dishonesty?
I mean, I think it ties.
Yeah, I feel like
it ties into
trusting,
that not trusting, right? Trying to take control.
Yeah.
Only spending time together.
I think we could touch a little bit on that one.
Yeah,
I
let's
feel.
get into that. Let's get into that.
So I think that's important. I only say that because I feel like I said in the last podcast, that people do get healthy or unhealthy relationships. That is an unhealthy trait to only spend time with your partner. And only being in each other's faces. I think it could cause a lot of like losing yourself and things like that. And so just only spending time together and not having your own self or your own individuality can or might cause some unhealthy behaviors as well. And so that's just what I wanted to say.
And we also mentioned about like, even if you don't want to spend time with your partner or maybe your extended family or friends of that nature, that you have the ability to also spend time with yourself. So don't forget that piece. I know Oge mentioned. Did you mention the like watching the? Was that me? I just thought about you because I know how you like. You like your Netflix sessions. So yeah, if that's what you're into, but just making sure that you do what you want to do and take some time for yourself as well.
And I think that also like ties into, being pressured into doing something that you don't want to do. Because if you're always spending time together, then it might be like, okay, maybe it's about just this person. It might be, oh, this person likes to watch a football match, and the person is saying, why don't you want to watch a football match with me? Spend time with me, go off and off and off like that. But like if you don't want to do something, it's good to say, I don't feel like doing this. But when you become pressured into doing what the person likes, it's unhealthy. And then when the other person, because I think we talked about the fact that abusive relationships tend to come out of control, power, and also like one person manipulating the other person. So it could also be in form of controlling the other person, like you have to do what I love to do. So like don't be pressured. And just those signs can be evident, and just do not overlook it.
Absolutely.
That's good.
I feel like that's why it's like there's something called mutual choices. So you know that you're doing something because both of you want to do it and both of you find it, comforting for your relationship, or not because you're really it's not because it's something you don't exactly want to do at that moment. It could be something you want to do for your relationship, but not just something you want to do at the moment because you're not like in the mood, and that's okay. That's where understanding as well comes in, and also respecting the person's choice, and not feeling like the person does not love you because they're refusing to do this thing at this moment.
And then you gaslight.
And then you gaslight.
Thank you for that. Look, I love that follow up.
So and also, I was gonna say something I was skipped. Oh yeah, I'll remember later. But yeah, so like just also thinking that I feel like all of these things are all tied up. Gaslighting, not communicating, and they're all like really tied up together. Power control, they're all like,
Right. So we talked about that communication piece on both sides of what healthy and abusive looks like. When we talk about mistreatment on the abusive side, we talk about, that physical, that mental, economic, all of those forms of abuse. Spiritual abuse, I feel like is one that's not
good.
talked about enough. Prohibiting somebody from practicing their religion or even
using it,
demeaning them for participating in it. You know what I mean? That's a huge one that a lot of people don't recognize as abuse. Any other abuse forms that you guys want to mention?
I was going to say something that isn't here, but also like because it pertains to kids, like using kids as a base relationship, that can also be abusive for children as well. Go tell your mom that she is blah, blah, blah. Or go tell your dad that he is blah, 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 we just having to like put all that pressure on children to be like to be like the grass that's suffering when the elephant is fighting, So I feel like that's infusing trauma on them, and we should try to lessen the burden on children.
Yeah, or even like talking negatively about the partner. Carrying those narratives for children to also participate in. Yeah, that's pretty huge too. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a part here that I would like us to expand a little bit, if we still have the time, and that's denying that people's actions are abusive. Like that this part, that this issue or this person is abusive, but you're trying to is it make excuses for them or not realizing it. I mean, you could actually realize it, but you might just cover up and say, it's because, this person loves me. That's why he's doing this. This person wants to maybe correct me, and that's his way of
or her way.
Or her way, his or her way of correcting. And this is how this woman shows me that she loves me. And I mean, so denying that, living in denial. And I think that's one stage of abusive relationships. And Vanity mentioned the other time, that only you have the ability to, see it. Because if people are showing you, you might not. But only you have the ability to see it and recognize that, okay, this thing is not healthy for me, or this thing is abusive for me. And then you can take, look for solutions to that.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Joyce, because we understand that there's a lot of uncomfortableness in friends and family members approaching the situation with their loved ones. And so that's why we're a resource for that education and awareness. So having conversations around it. Did you listen to that podcast? They talk about unhealthy relationships. You know what I mean? But there's also other resources too. We want to acknowledge all the resources that are in the area. And they're constantly growing, and we're excited about that. But we understand that, it's hard to have those one-on-one conversations. But you can always provide resources. And you can always do it in a manner that's again, this is something cool, check this out.
Not forceful.
Instead of saying, call this DV hotline real quick.
That's
pretty direct. There are indirect ways. But that's why we're happy to be this resource, because we do provide information that can be taken, and what the hope is to have that impact.
And I feel like if you're watching this and you're in an abusive situation right now, I feel like you could if you feel like you're at the point where you want to speak with someone or use one or two DV resources, I think we would have that. everywhere on our page this whole October, just to like dish out some resources.
Yep.
And we'll also have some links as well to this podcast, so you could use them. You know, I always say, I told you something, Jen, yesterday, and I would just say that DV survivors or DV victims, they would get to that point themselves where they feel like they eventually need this help.
Yeah.
And whatever that point may look like for different people, it could be very late for some, where like everything is damaged, they're at the lowest, nothing can be done, you know. It's, you know, and it could be like at the earliest for people. So whenever you're at that stage, call someone, call for help, and I hope you get the help you need. Because
it's never too late. It's never too late to regain control over your own life.
And we'll put this in the we'll put this up too on our website. But I also want to say before we wrap up, just that while domestic violence, intimate partner violence happens to every race, culture, and community, in the Black community, there are different ways that it's shown and that we see it. And the Amani Community Services has a power and control wheel that kind of shows you those examples of what economic abuse looks like, spiritual abuse and things like that, what different kinds of abuse may look like in the Black community, because it might be different than other, or it is definitely different than other races and ethnicities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also want to make note of the impact that abusive and unhealthy relationships does have on individuals, right? It does have that physical aspect of like, it can cause a lot of health problems, chronic stress, right? It can cause like a lot of gastrointestinal issues. It can cause a lot. We talked about it in one of our previous podcasts, the connection between experiencing intimate partner violence and unhealthy relationships and how that's connected to autoimmune diseases. So you know what I mean? And even in the broader spectrum, how it impacts communities, how it impacts partners, how it impacts children, how it impacts family. We understand the impact, which is why we're here to be one of the resources. So take this information, share this information,
Right.
you know what I mean? Because that is the goal, is to, again, as Joyce mentioned at the beginning, is to really acknowledge, provide awareness, and eradicate intimate partner violence and unhealthy relationships.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll leave you with that. It is the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we're excited to
wear your purple.
Wear your
purple.
Check out our page. We're gonna be at a lot of events, giving a lot of information out. So, you know, check up on us, see what we doing, see what we getting into. Tune in per usual. And it was good speaking with you all today.
All right.
It's
It's a wrap.
Bye, people.